his planned reelection campaign with their heckling during the State of the Union, and new revelations that the College Board was in touch with Governor Ron DeSantis as it was deciding what courses would be included or excluded in AP African American Studies. We know that the College Board watered down a lot of those courses that have to do with Black history. Now, it says it was not because of political motivation, but lots of folks have questions about the contact they had with Ron DeSantis. And the Mississippi legislature votes to create a separate and all-white court. Interesting, given that Mississippi is a predominantly Black state. What's going to happen there? We'll keep our eyes on that. And New Jersey is pairing police officers with mental health professionals in an effort to de-escalate conflict with police. Abortion activists believe Biden did not lean in sufficiently in his State of the Union on issues of reproductive freedom. And the death toll in Syria now reaches more than 20,000 people as a result of that devastating 7.8 earthquake on Monday. We continue to pray for those victims and their families. U.S. Intelligence Department confirmed that there was data collecting equipment, surprise, surprise, on the Chinese spy balloon that was spotted over Montana, and that this is a part of a larger surveillance effort on the part of China. And Pence, that is, former Vice President Mike Pence, gets subpoenaed from the special counsel in the January 6th investigation. Jack Smith is wasting no time and getting pretty aggressive in this investigation. And sadly, Burt Bacharach, who we all love, is dead at 94 years old. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination during drive time for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In my first hour today, I'll be joined by LA Times columnist Erica Smith and Professor Calvin Smiley, who is a frequent contributor to the Washington Post. And in my second hour, it's all about the culture and Black Twitter. I go one-on-one with Dr. Andre Brock, a preeminent media and communications scholar at Georgia Institute. We're going to be talking about how do Black folks feel about what some are calling the blackety-black Super Bowl. We saw it last year at the halftime performance with Dr. Dre and Snoop, and this year Rihanna is going to take the stage at the Super Bowl. I'm sure Black Twitter has a lot to say. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking in real time. I've read this recent study that puts Black folks at the bottom of yet another category. This time, it's Black students in graduate schools, particularly at predominantly white colleges and universities. This new Gallup poll out says one in three Black students experience some form of discrimination at colleges and universities that have the least amount of diversity. Now, this discrimination leads many students to stop going to school altogether, and others, it discourages them from even applying. So we're in this moment where the College Board is watering down AP Black Studies courses. Florida's trying to prevent teachers from even teaching Black history. The Supreme Court seems to be on the verge of striking down affirmative action in college admissions. Has me wondering, are Black students, under attack in this country? And this is why it is so important for all of us to support young people who are enrolled in college, do our part in supporting them, nurturing them, mentoring them. Each and every one of us can make a commitment, particularly during Black History Month, to take on a college student or a soon-to-be college student and make sure they know that they are loved, they are affirmed, that we see them, we appreciate them, we applaud them. And if they are going to a predominantly white college or university, there is someone at home that has their back. You can be that person. When we come forward, my contributors and today's trending news and all of the analysis for your drive homes. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, lendistry.com/KBLA today.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I'm asking about Prevnar 20 because there's a chance pneumococcal pneumonia could put me in the hospital.
Age 65 or older, you may be at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
I want to be able to keep my plans.
So I'm asking my doctor about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
The rent is too damn high. KBLA joins you in calling for affordable housing. The LA Tenants Union is a diverse, tenant-led movement for the human right to housing for all. The LA Tenants Union demands safe, affordable housing and union rent control. They organize against landlord harassment, mass evictions, and displacement, and mobilize for the repeal of the Ellis Act and Costa-Hawkins Act. The LA Tenants Union is on a mission to strengthen tenants' political power through education, advocacy, and direct action. To get help with your eviction or other landlord-tenant issues, take action for justice, or become a member, visit latenantsunion.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 15.
This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news and expert analysis. I am joined today by my expert contributors, LA Times columnist Erica Smith and Hunter College professor Calvin Smiley. Welcome back, Calvin, and welcome back, Erica.
Thank you.
Oh, glad to see you guys again. I did not have a chance to talk with you yesterday after the State of the Union on Tuesday night, but we saw Joe Biden walking out of that Capitol with a little pep in his step and smiling and grinning, and he was quite happy. And he got off the plane today, really trying to say to the American people, this is a new Joe Biden. So anybody that had doubts about my abilities, my stamina, the energy, he was trying to tell them, look, Joe is back. What are you guys thinking about Joe and what he's selling? Do you think people are buying it? Jump in, Erica. What are you thinking?
I was going to say, you should start. I thought it was an interesting, to be sure, State of the Union. It was more feisty than we've seen Joe Biden in quite some time. And I think that satisfied a lot of people who've wanted him to kind of punch back and be, aviator Joe as opposed to, bureaucrat Joe.
Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon, Dark Brandon. What was I thinking? So he was definitely that. And I think him mixing it up with Marjorie Taylor Greene and just kind of, it was a good look, I think, overall for him. And I think it's one he needed. His poll numbers have not been great. Lots of questions about his age, which, to be fair, I share some of those questions about his age. And so I think that it's, he's trying to turn the page and show that he can be reelected as president and be a viable candidate. So it was a good start for sure.
Calvin, do you think he has a new foil? And that being, this extremist Republican Party that has said, and there's record of it, and he said, I can show you the record, that they want to balance the budget, or at least, bring down the deficit by cutting Social Security and Medicare. We heard them screaming, liar, 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 and he just flipped that on them. So, are the extremists in the Republican Party the new foil for Joe Biden?
Yeah, I think they try to really use him, or rather use that moment to try to really accentuate some of his age and things like that. And he stood toe to toe with them, and he was actually inviting the engagement. And I thought it was really amazing how, if we think back to 2009 with Joe Wilson, when he screamed you lie at Obama, and how much of a scandal that was. And really we saw how on Tuesday night we had the unseasoned amateur night at the Apollo with the GOP screaming at him in every turn. But yeah, I mean, I was impressed with at least that point that Joe Biden was really able to keep up and keep his pep in his step, as you said.
Well, wait a minute. You said you were impressed with that part. So that suggests to me that there were other parts that you weren't too impressed with. Go ahead. Spill the tea. What upset you about Uncle Joe?
Well, I mean, I always find it very kind of a little bit unnerving and a little uncomfortable how politicians kind of parade people who've experienced violence as kind of a part of the political theater. So seeing Tyree Nichols' parents up there, and I can't speak for them, so maybe they really wanted to be there. So I don't want to sound like I'm speaking on behalf of the Nichols family, but I do find it very interesting how, on one hand, Joe Biden is saying how most police are good, but then saying these types of events happen too often. So which is it, Joe? Is it that police are good, or that they are actually out here killing people? And so it's this kind of constantly toting the line between not really trying to piss off the police, but also trying to tout this idea to the Black community, which I find, a little bit exploitative.
Well, let me just tell you, from having talked to so many of these parents who have lost their loved ones to police violence, they absolutely positively want to be there. Michael Brown's dad was on the show last week and letting us know, I'm going to be at the State of the Union. And I've talked to Oscar Grant's mom. I have a really good relationship with her, Wanda Johnson, and others of the women who are considered mothers of the movement. And they see this as an opportunity to elevate the issues of their son's death. And we know Lucy McBath is in Congress now because of her son being shot, wasn't by a police officer, but a horrific killing by a white man for nothing but noise, so we were told. But I hear what you're saying about the exploitive nature of it, but having spent a lot of time with a lot of these parents, that's not how they feel about it. They feel like this is the way to turn a tragedy into something that is purposeful and perhaps can help save the lives of others. But I hear you, and there is definitely for these politicians a way that they use people. But the issue of policing in America is complicated, because who doesn't have a cop in their family or a friend or someone in law enforcement? This is a young man that I've mentored all his life, and his sole goal in life was to be a part of the FBI. So, and you go into Memphis, you got the Black police chief, you have a lot of Black officers on that force. So that's a complicated question about Black, police. People use it as a way to get, into the middle class. But I want to talk about these schools. You're a professor. That stat I read, that Gallup poll, what's going on at these colleges? Black folks, we know there's discrimination, but did that number shock you? 1 in 3 in some of these universities feel some kind of overt discrimination to the point where they want to stop going, and some even won't even apply.
Yeah, I mean, when we look about the history of American education, Professor Michelle Fine wrote a book called, I'm forgetting the name right now, but the history of American education was not designed for Black folks, right? It was designed solely for white folks. And so when we think about PWIs and we think about what is being taught there, and then the cultures that kind of are then created around these ivory towers, you can feel very isolated, even amongst community. I went to a PWI. I was a scholar athlete. I did a sport that was predominantly white. I was the only Black person in the sport I did.
Did you play squash, Kelvin?
No, I did something in the water. I was a swimmer.
I played squash, so I'm just saying,
I was in the water. So, but it goes back to this idea that it can be very isolating and not having really places to turn or feeling like you can turn. And then you often get that kind of gaslighting of, you're making too big of a deal out of this, or you're projecting, or any of these other kind of ways to kind of erase one's experience. So yeah, it's not really shocking to hear those numbers when they come out.
And let's juxtapose those numbers, Erica, with this report out that the AP board, or the college board that's deciding the curriculum for AP Black Studies courses, lo and behold, they were communicating with the Florida Department of Education and all of the complaints that Ron DeSantis has about what should and should not be taught as a part of Black history. Guess what? They had access to that. There was interaction between the board and the Department of Education. Now, they want us to believe that their decision to water down that curriculum was not in any way influenced by politics. But are we really to believe that Ron DeSantis didn't put his thumb on the scale and cause the board to really change that curriculum?
I mean, no, definitely not. I mean, Ron DeSantis has made that his mission, this whole critical race theory, AKA anything having to teach anything having to do with race in reality, not in schools at all. So, I mean, the idea that he had a hands-off approach is ridiculous. But I mean, I think, what's also really interesting is that you have so many entities in Florida that are in some ways vying to say, I did this. They want credit for it because it's such a political, thing right now with the right that, for anybody who can claim credit for that, they want that, which is, I think, really telling about where we are as a country and how, divided we are about academia. And so, of course, the report you were just mentioning, of course, we have reports like that come out. We have governors of, major states in this country who are trying to basically unravel basic education for people to feel like they are understood on their campuses and in society. So it's just, it's ridiculous is what one would expect to me.
So Calvin, you're at a college, and Hunter, is it a predominantly white college?
No, Hunter College is part of the City University of New York system. And so we are one of the largest urban institutions in the country, serving mostly at the undergraduate level, students of color. Hunter itself is around 22 to 24,000 students, with the majority being minority students. We also serve a lot of students who are first-generation college students, first-generation immigrants to the United States, right? Hunter and CUNY as a whole is really part of the longer celebration of the immigrant and the legacy story of how one can ascend and have social mobility. And so, but we still have our challenges, right? One of the things about CUNY is, as I just said, our undergraduate institutions are majority minority students. Our professional schools actually flip and actually look much more like PWI. So, there's still work to be done. Since the death of George Floyd, we've been retooling a lot of our curriculum, looking at how do we make space for the 21st century conversations around race. And one of those conversations is looking at our core curriculum and how some of that hasn't been updated in 3 decades. And so we really have to kind of rethink how we're understanding race, gender, class, and all these other kind of 21st century problems.
So what happens when students, they come into your college? They're mostly minority students, so they're around other minority students, but are they coming in with a really good understanding of Black history? Because I think that's where this debate is, like, what can be taught? Ron DeSantis is so gung-ho on this notion that little white kids should not be made to feel uncomfortable. He doesn't talk about little Black kids feeling uncomfortable, but he's always talks about, well, they shouldn't be made to feel like they're at fault for the actions of their ancestors. And so I'm just wondering, when kids come into your college, how much Black history, accurate Black history, do they know?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think that the better answer is that most of our students experience Black history because they're Black and they're Latinx and they're students of color. So when.
But wait a minute, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, a lot of Black folks, they don't know what systemic racism is. They know they've been mistreated, but when you start talking about systemic racism, a lot of folks are like, what?
So they might know the academic or kind of professional language of it, but once we start breaking it down, they're like, yeah, I've experienced that. So when we talk about stop, question, and frisk, which was a New York City Police Department protocol that overwhelmingly stopped young Black and Latinx young men for probable cause, they can either speak directly to that experience or speak about their brother, their father, their uncle, their cousin. And so that's always a different kind of jumping off point to kind of get into the kind of deeper academic and historical conversations that we do have in my classes.
But I guess my point is, they have not learned in high school before they get to you concepts about systemic racism and what that is. I mean, they may have experienced it. We all experience it, but I think this AP course was trying to give kids an opportunity to learn about it and
Sure.
really understand it and help put into context when they see something like these Black officers. Because a lot of folks are struggling with that. Like, what does that mean that you'd have 5 Black officers? And now we know there could have been as many as, 7, 8, 9, 10 who brutally beat Tyree Nichols. A lot of Black folks are having a hard time putting that into context. And I think it's because they haven't had that kind of foundation about racism, not just being about, white people mistreating Black people, being an individual act that people take.
Right. And I think we also try to think about racism as individual acts as opposed to institutional. And I think that's really important to kind of understand and put and frame the killing of Tyree Nichols by 5 Black officers. While they were Black, they were upholding a system of white supremacy and doing everything that was in line with what the culture of policing often tells them they can do to certain demographics of the population. So regardless of their own skin color and deep melanin, they can see a person as an adversary in a way that they might not see another person as a threat, an adversary, or criminal.
Okay. Erica, what are you thinking about? I mean, as we think about this issue of race, and it comes up so often in terms of policing, we now have, and I think I misspoke about Mississippi being predominantly Black. What I meant to say was Jackson, the capital, is predominantly Black. And this is where the Mississippi House has approved the creation of a new court system within the capital of Jackson, in which judges and prosecutors in this overwhelmingly Black city would be appointed by white state officials. How is that sitting with you?
I mean, not well, number one, but on the other hand, and I hate to say this, and as I sit in LA in California, it's also Mississippi. And so there is some level of I'm not entirely shocked if something like this were to go down, that it would be in Mississippi or Alabama. And I say that as my relatives are both from both of those states. But I mean, I think that, as we talk about systemic racism, as we talk about these systems, I mean, this is just this state kind of reenacting this idea of separate and taking, creating these courts, particularly for white residents in this little pocket of this overwhelmingly Black city, to basically separate themselves and, to funnel a bunch of money into this area where everybody else kind of suffers as a result. I mean, it's all of the things that we talk about when we talk about systemic racism and how systems operate to benefit, white supremacy, in this case, actual white people, and against people of color. And I think this is just one more page in what Ron DeSantis doesn't want students to learn about, what so many students come to college not understanding, what so much of the public, adults who are struggling to understand, even since so much of the conversation has shifted from individual racism to systemic racism post George Floyd. I do think one thing that's interesting is that I do think prior to George Floyd, this idea of systemic racism wasn't even really, most people had no clue what that was. They didn't have a concept of what that was. I'm not saying there are a lot of people today who are obtusely, who don't want to know what that is and want to deny that it exists. But I think that the concept is now actually out in the public way more than it was before George Floyd. And so I do think the one thing about the Tyree Nichols case is there is a framework for people to start to understand that. I mean, just some of the chatter I saw immediately after the tapes came out and we saw that there were Black officers, there was a connection between that and white supremacy. So, I mean, it's by no means perfect. We definitely need more education. We definitely need to point out states like Mississippi, but I do think there's a different kind of conversation going on today than there was, say, 10 years ago.
But Calvin, do you think that, white folks are becoming more brazen because this proposal in Mississippi would be a huge break from the rest of the state where judges and prosecutors are elected by the voters? So if approved by the state Senate and the governor, this court system and its judges would preside over this improvement district, which includes Jackson's downtown shopping and entertainment areas. So they're proposing something that's so different from how the court system is operated throughout the rest of the state.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous type of thing that it's even fathomable in 2023, but it also is these are the type of things that become reminders that the Southern strategy has always been there, right? It's just one of those ideas that kind of rises above the rest. And so seeing this kind of play out goes back to what my colleague just said, right? George Floyd's death was a moment where we all kind of took a step back and said, what is actually happening here? We should do something about it. But when we take a step back to kind of look forward, that usually brings about certain backlash, and that backlash is this kind of anti-CRT, right? I think it's always kind of humorous how CRT has been around for almost 40 years, but somehow, it's like when you finally realize something new, and now it's a new shiny coin for you, but other people have known about it, and that's what CRT has been for these kind of white Republicans. It's something that all of a sudden now they want to go after and make it the new boogeyman. And so, looking at what Mississippi's trying to do, once again, just reinforces that Southern strategy is very much alive and well, and that we have to combat it in as many efforts as we can.
When we come forward, we're going to continue this conversation about the so-called motivation behind this proposed legislation in Mississippi and how other states are dealing with what they say is, the need for police reform. News, traffic, and sports up next, but stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
And here's the latest from the Black Information Network. The TSA is testing facial recognition technology in 16 major airports and wants to expand its use. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley is joining other Democratic senators in calling on the TSA to stop using facial recognition technology. Studies show the technology can racially discriminate because African-American people were up to 100 times more likely to be misidentified. The spy balloon that was shot down off the Carolina coastline was reportedly part of a larger spying operation. Multiple reports say the balloon was equipped with antennas and solar panels large enough to power sensors. Kyrie Irving says he's glad to be done with Brooklyn. Dallas Mavericks new guard said Tuesday that he felt very disrespected at times during his tenure with the Nets. Now Kevin Durant is reportedly going to the Phoenix Suns. That is the latest. I'm Doug Davis from the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
In Santa Monica, 10 eastbound before you get to 20th Street. It looks like we've got a crash in the center lane is going to be blocked. You're hitting the brakes from the McClure Tunnel. Montebello, 60 eastbound before Paramount Boulevard. The two right lanes are taken out with an accident. In Boyle Heights on the 60 westbound after Lorena Street, the left lane is blocked with a crash. It's slow from Indiana Street. And in Yorba Linda, 91 eastbound right after Gypsum Canyon Road, that crash clearing to the shoulder.
Need weekend plans? Check out what's happening at your local Lowe's. Weekending at Lowe's gives you and your family the opportunity to make them your weekend destination with free events, workshops, and more. Visit Lowe's.com/events for this month's full lineup.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers and Clippers did what they could today to keep pace with the Phoenix Suns, who made the trade of the year by acquiring Kevin Durant from Brooklyn. The Lakers traded guard Patrick Beverley to Orlando for 7-foot center Mo Bamba. They also sent center Thomas Bryant to Denver in exchange for shooting guard Devon Reed. The Clippers traded guards Reggie Jackson and John Wall and forward Luke Kennard. In return, the Clippers get backup point guard Bones Highland from Denver, veteran shooting guard Eric Gordon from Houston, and backup center Mason Plumlee from Charlotte. All NBA trading ended today at noon. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by Original Taco Pete's.
This is Aaron at Original Taco Pete's. Let us cater your Super Bowl party and future event. Call 323-348-4441 and visit us at 3272 West Slauson off Crenshaw.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Fred McDaniels, a black cement finisher, started his career at LADWP in 1947. He worked in water distribution and knew the importance of delivering safe and reliable water to our customers. Today, Anselmo Collins runs the second largest municipal water utility in the nation. As head of LADWP's water system, he runs a state-of-the-art operation including thousands of miles of pipe, treatment plants, reservoirs, tanks, and pump stations. Anselmo ensures that Angelinos have access to reliable, safe, and quality drinking water every day. As your LADWP celebrates Black History Month, we proudly highlight the excellent work and exemplary leadership of Black employees who work hard to serve you. Visit us online at joinladwp.com.
Central Neighborhood Health Foundation is a full-service network of federally qualified health care centers that serves local communities throughout Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. CNHF clinics provide low-cost to no-cost, compassionate, comprehensive, quality health care, which includes primary care services for chronic disease and diabetes management, pediatric and women's services, preventive care, vision and dental screenings, COVID-19 testing and vaccines, flu vaccines, behavioral health, HIV, and substance use services. Virtual telehealth visits are available from the comfort of your home with highly qualified physicians and medical professionals. CNHF also provides peer support specialist training and help with housing navigation. Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. Your wellness is our priority. Comprehensive care built on trust and respect. For more information, visit cnhfclinics.org or call 213-536-5815 today to locate a clinic near you.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a whole lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing capital. Today, I spoke with Tatiana, a community manager for JP Morgan Chase.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Tatiana Roberts. I am a community manager for JP Morgan Chase. I have to honestly say that this has been the most fulfilling position that I've ever had, where I get to give back to the community because I saw my mom's struggles. That's really what fuels what I do to make sure that that the community has all the access to the resources that my mother didn't have.
So for the mother who's in business, what are 3 quick tips you can give to ensure that they're on the right path to accessing financial support from a bank like Chase?
Say number 1, just make sure that you're checking your credit on a consistent basis and taking action to either fix your credit, maintain your credit, or rebuild your credit. The second thing would be budget. I know that B word is kind of like ugly for, right? A lot of people don't like that B word, but it has to be done. We need to tell our money where to go. The last thing is to build a network of supporters that are going to lift you up.
The community building here in Crenshaw is that network. So visit the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon. Meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
We are tracking today's news, and in some news happening right now, angry senators grill Pentagon officials over the Chinese spy balloon response. That happened today. And the U.S. may target Chinese entities linked to the spy balloon. The FBI is also investigating the Chinese spy balloon, but much of the evidence is still underwater. And this is not surprising, but GOP voters picked DeSantis, the governor we've been talking about in the first 30 minutes of the show, over Donald Trump in a hypothetical head-to-head matchup for the 2024 presidential nomination, according to a new poll. Interesting poll results. Joining me is LA Times columnist Erica Smith and Professor Calvin Smiley. Professor Smiley, we've been talking a lot this last 30 minutes about DeSantis, and here it is. He is beating Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup for that Republican nomination. So if he gets that Republican nomination, some folks said he is more competitive and would beat Joe Biden. That's I saw another poll out recently that says that. How scary is that?
Yeah, I mean, he's the younger, more conservative version of Donald Trump. So it makes sense that he could be their new rising, shining star. Where I find optimism is that we know Donald Trump is not someone who would ever back down or concede. So maybe they will just cancel each other out, right? You know, if DeSantis got the GOP, Trump runs as an independent, and they can kind of just kaput each other.
Yeah, I can only imagine the name calling that we will see in that primary election, because Donald Trump, the thought of the base liking someone other than him is going to send him into just a complete tirade. We're going to watch him melt down in real time. So we'll be watching that. But I want to get back to this Mississippi legislator who thinks it's a good idea for him to pass a bill or to sponsor a bill that would give the legislators the right to appoint judges and prosecutors. Now, this legislation is being authored by a Republican representative. His name is Trey Lamar, and he says that it's because of Jackson's high crime rate. He says that's what's motivating this bill. He says he wants to expand the police force so that they can address crime. Now, this bill is designed to make, according to a Black lawmaker, our capital city of Jackson safer, is what the bill is supposed to do. But Black lawmakers are saying, look, Mississippi would be the only state that does this. And how can you solve the problems related to crime by removing the vote from Black people? Erica, what do you make of this so-called attempt to address high crime? We saw in Memphis, that was why the Scorpion unit was created by the Memphis Police Department, and juxtapose that with New Jersey that says they're teaming up their police officers with more mental health professionals to de-escalate altercations with the police. So we have these widely divergent ways that states and municipalities are trying to deal with crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the question of, are you actually trying to solve crime, or are you just trying to say you're trying to solve crime, or are you trying to solve crime for certain people? I think that's really the question. I mean, there's, I don't pretend to know a way of quote unquote solving crime or even fixing policing, but I do know that it's hard. Both of these are hard. If it wasn't hard, we would have done it already. But I do think this idea of what Mississippi's doing isn't about solving crime. It's about protecting a certain group of residents to make them feel in a bubble and that they don't have to deal with the problems of policing in general, which in Jackson, I guess there's some complaints from Black residents about the police force and how they're being treated. And so rather than actually deal with those problems and grapple with those problems, they're trying to kind of try this like separate strategy and take ourselves out of this and let, Black people deal with what Black people deal with, is what it sounds like. Where New Jersey is taking what would be a harder approach to this. They're bringing in mental health professionals to work with police officers. And that's a tactic that's been used or being tried in a number of cities, including Los Angeles, with mixed results. But it does seem to be where it is actually being pursued and actually done well. It does seem to have some good feedback to that, because the idea of having armed officers going into a situation where you're going to be escalating a situation, that's probably nothing as good as going to come from that. You need somebody who understands how to deal with somebody in a mental health crisis, somebody who's, having a breakdown, maybe it's due to substance abuse, somebody who doesn't necessarily come in with guns blazing to kind of situation. And it sounds like that's what New Jersey is doing, and it seems like it's working. So I'm glad they're expanding that program.
So, Calvin, you live in New York City, and your mayor, Eric Adams, he's got a law enforcement background. He's a police officer himself. What has been his response to what we heard over the summer was this rise in crime in New York City? There were some horrible cases of people being shot in Times Square, and I guess people who were being, there've been some shootings or crime reported on the subways in New York City. So what has his approach been?
Yeah, so he's taking kind of a Giuliani era. We have to have this kind of war on crime. I mean, he seasons it a bit better with a little bit more flavor, but he's very much this kind of more and more police. The new budget was just released, and literally every single other sector of social services has been cut, for the exception of police. So if we really want to get to the bottom of public safety, if we really want to get to the bottom of giving people a better quality of life, we need to fund housing, we need to fund healthcare, we need to fund homeless services, mental health, education. We cannot just keep throwing money at the cops. The New York City Police is a roughly 40,000 strong unit. It has a $11 billion plus budget. They have a bigger budget than most, or not most, but some countries' GDPs. How much more money, how many more officers do you need before you start saying, wait, maybe there's an alternative way to solve these problems, or at least get to some of the root causes of these problems, which is poverty.
And that's why I say, Calvin, this whole issue of race and policing is so complicated, because we know that, at one point, experts or, folks were, telling us, diversify the police department, get more Black officers. That would be a solution to the excessive force and the killing of unarmed Black men. And, there was this notion that if we had more Black folks in city government, like Mayor Adams, that would be a solution. So we've had Black mayors, we've had Black police chiefs, we've had, Black officers hired onto police departments in larger numbers. But that doesn't seem to be solving the problem of excessive force and the violence that we are seeing perpetrated primarily for purposes of this conversation against unarmed Black men and women.
Yeah, and I think, some of that has to do with the kind of reductionist view of diversity and diversity hiring, is that sometimes we're hiring wolves in sheep clothing, right? So if you have a Black mayor who's espousing certain ideologies and fundamental principles that white moderates and white conservatives love to hear, then they seem like they are the illusion of progress, but really taking steps back. And I think that, when we look at what Eric Adams is doing right now, it's a lot of talk and it's a lot of gesturing, but he's not really trying to solve the problem. He's trying to give money to his friends, the cops. And there's in a city of 8.9 million people, there's going to be crime, but I think part of solving that is not only anti-poverty legislation, but we also have to think about how much local media across the country, but specifically in New York, really tries to harpen on that and kind of crafts a kind of cop narrative that, if we only talk about every single gruesome thing that happens, then everyone around the world is going to see that, as opposed to, looking at other things as well.
I'm with you, Erica. We've gone from, get more Black cops, get more Black folks in charge at police stations, get more Black mayors because they appoint the police chiefs, get body cameras, do more training, put mental health professionals on the street. And you said that about LA, and we just had like 3 horrific shootings in LA in January, and at least 2 of them have clear mental health issues implications. So solving crime and dealing with the police crisis in America is tough. We can agree on that. When we come forward, a new study that 92% of football players, NFL players tested have CTE. When we come forward, what's that about? And what is the NFL going to do about it? KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Reparations Task Force agrees to extend its work to 2024. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. The California Task Force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans in California decided at the 2-day meeting on campus of San Diego State that it would support legislation that extends the panel until July of next year. An 8-0 vote with 1 abstention is what moved the date that was previously set for the summer of this year. The goal now is to have ample time to satisfactorily implement an action plan based on the findings of its final report, which is due in 5 months. This decision was made 4 months after Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed legislation asking for a 12-month extension. I'm Maisha Cairo, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Millionaires Roundtable with Lynn Richardson is creating millionaires one family, one day, $1, $1 at a time. KBLA Talk 1580 will be celebrating Black History Month Wealth with Lynn Richardson live on Wednesday, February 22nd at the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon in Leimert Park. Come check out the space. This location has been a bank branch for over 44 years and is now a community center. It provides resources and education to help the community with money goals, home ownership, and entrepreneurship. You and a guest can win lunch with Lynn Richardson February 22nd. Go to KBLA1580.com or the KBLA 1580 mobile app today and register. See you there.
The Los Angeles Urban League and Parkside EDC will help you make more with what you have on Thursday, February 9th at 6 p.m. Register for this free workshop now at laul.org/BWAARP.
Are you a business owner, freelancer, or filing taxes for the first time? Are you tired of dodging the IRS? Stop what you're doing now. Mac Tax Solutions, the father and son dynamic duo tax team, is the most sought out tax business around. Mac Tax Solutions guarantees 100% maximum refund and free consultation. Call now. 562-715-9945. That's 562-715-9945. Or visit MacTaxSolutions.com. IRS or California FTB notices. Free e-file remote tax services with free secure tax zone portal. A $40 gift card will be included when you file. Call now. 562-715-9945. 562-715-9945. Staying on track with all required documents will help you reach your personal and financial goals. Prevent paycheck garnishments. Mac Tax Solutions will even provide all tax programs that your business could be eligible for. Now is the time to make your business work for you. Call now. 562-715-9945. Be sure to download the KBLA app. Tell all your friends and families it's time for a fresh tax start. Call now. 562-715-9945 or visit the website at MacTaxSolutions.com. Call now. 562-715-9945.
Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited Black newspaper in the state of California with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call Our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
I'm back and I'm talking in this segment with LA Times columnist Erica Smith and Professor Calvin Smiley. And I want to take a call. Morris is on the line from Inglewood. You're on the air, Morris.
To me, folks, all of you are very intelligent people, but I call it a false narrative. You talk about the wrong thing. What we need to be talking about is how $40 trillion has been transferred from the middle class to the top 1.5% of this country since righteous Ronald Reagan. Anything involving the police department obviously is a fascistic approach to a humane situation. So when we started addressing the transfer of wealth in this country, they were talking real. Now what's happened is there are three major Supreme Court rulings, the most famous being Citizens United, which has decimated representative government in this country. So what the people want, they can't get. We're the oldest democracy in the world, but the least responsive. So we need to understand what's taking place and what's going on, how we got here. There's been a transfer of wealth here, okay? And that's what we need to be talking about. So when we get the rich people being accountable for paying tax in this country, we're all going to benefit, including them. This thing, racism, it costs us a lot of money, but you can't get mad at white people. You got to understand what they've been trained, conditioned, and programmed to believe, particularly in their countries.
All right, Morris, I don't think, Morris, let me say this. Thank you for calling. Appreciate your comments. And I don't think you disagree with us. And I don't think any one of us, and I know my panelists would not agree that we have had a huge transfer of wealth in this country from the middle class and that the rich get away with not paying their taxes. Biden really punctuated that in his State of the Union speech on Tuesday. So no disagreement, I think. Calvin, any disagreement with our caller Morris about we need a redistribution of wealth in this country?
Not at all. And I think that redistribution has to go all the way back from the beginning, right? When we think about the American Revolution, it was rich folks in the colonies fighting rich folks in England. And they wanted to hoard that wealth even further. So I agree with Morris. Social, economic, political redistribution is what is needed.
And I assume, Erica, you have no disagreement with Morris?
No, Morris's point whatsoever.
All right, Morris, we're all good over here. I do want to talk about this report, though. Hold on a second, Morris. I maybe you want to have a comment on this too. So there's this new study out from Boston University. A study, 345 football players, former NFL players, out of 376, that's 92% were diagnosed with CTE. And we know that's that traumatic brain injury that comes from repeated blows to the head. And although it can't be definitively confirmed as a diagnosis until, someone is dead, but this report gives us a pretty good indication that football players are they're suffering from very severe brain injuries as a result of playing the game. And here's what one of the directors of the center says. She says, there is a love for football by the public and individuals that transcends common sense. Calvin, people who play football, do they have common sense? You think they know that there's a 92% chance that they're going to have CTE as a result of playing the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we continue to learn more about the science, it might change or move the needle slightly in terms of types of precautions and way that players are taught to tackle and things like that. But yeah, I think it is. I mean, I know I would be lying here to say that I don't have somewhere to be on Sunday to watch the Super Bowl. And it really comes from a place that it is entertainment on one hand, but on the other hand, it's one of those kind of ways, and going back to Morris's point, that redistributes wealth, particularly for low income folks, right? We see a lot of folks who come from poverty, from urban, rural areas, who are able to kind of make it out of that kind of proverbial hood through that sport. And so, yeah, it's a really delicate situation, and it's one that I don't know if I can solve that.
Yeah, that's complicated, Erica, because I hear you. Yes, it's a way out of the hood, way out of the ghetto, way out of poverty for not a lot of folks, a handful of folks who are lucky enough to be drafted into the NFL. But look at the price they pay. The CTE is no joke. Causes memory loss, confusion, impaired judgment, impulse control problems, aggression, depression, thoughts of suicide, and other symptoms that even resemble Parkinson's disease. And I have a good friend whose husband was an NFL player, and she can tell you her husband suffers from probably 7 of those items, those symptoms that I identified. So, Erica, is it worth it to get out the hood if you're going to have Parkinson-like symptoms and be depressed and memory loss? And I just don't know. I think
it's that quintessential American thing, right? We're so focused on the present and the immediate gratification, I think, sometimes, that we don't think about long term. And I think, I don't see, we've seen obviously an uptick in some parents putting their kids in other sports rather than football. But I don't think that football as a sport is going to go away either for the fans, because, I have a place to be on Sunday to watch the game too. But, I also don't see it. I think the pressure should be on the NFL to be more realistic about what are these injuries and actually to provide more help. Like, I think every time we talk about CTE, we can also point to something the NFL hasn't done well to really prepare to take care of players and to really, address this issue, no pun intended, head on. And so I think it's, I don't know if it's worth it. I guess for the people that play it and continue to go into the league every year, I guess it is.
Well, I can't think of another occupation where it's pretty much guaranteed that you are going to have traumatic brain injury after you retire from that occupation, and everybody just says, oh well, that's just a part of the game, just give me my millions of dollars and my endorsements and my brain injury. Ooh, that's I think, as everybody watches the Super Bowl this Sunday and 30+ million people will be tuned in, maybe this report will be somewhere in the back of their minds. I'm sure it dropped at this time to be a reminder to people that this is a very, very dangerous sport. And despite how glitzy and glamorous and sexy the Super Bowl may appear, but there is a deep, dark side to this game. And thanks to those researchers for at least, enlightening us. So we can't say we don't know. Now we know. Thanks so much, Erica Smith from the Los Angeles Times, for joining me this hour. And thank you, Professor Calvin Smiley, professor at Hunter College. Always a pleasure to have both of you on. Your insights are invaluable. I look forward to seeing you again, both, real soon. All right, coming up in my second hour, I'm talking to an expert on race, communications, and the media. ahead of the Super Bowl. We're going to be talking about the Super Bowl because last year the halftime performance at the Super Bowl was, as some folks called it, blackety black, with performances by Dr. Dre and Snoop and Kendrick Lamar and Mary J. Blige. But some Black folks on Twitter still were giving the NFL the side eye, saying, okay, NFL, just because you bring all these Black artists onto the halftime show doesn't obscure the fact that there is a problem, a race problem that is seemingly pervasive and endemic to the NFL when it comes to coaching, when it comes to management, when it comes to team ownership. So despite having that incredible Black lineup last year and this year, Rihanna, the incomparable Rihanna, will highlight and will be the star at the halftime performance. And so I'm going to be talking to Professor Andre Brock, about what this Super Bowl means for Black Twitter, how Black folks are thinking about the NFL. You got this report comes out with 92% of the players, former players with CTE. You've got the discrimination lawsuit by the coaches. And this lawsuit, it's been a lawsuit filed also challenging the NFL's disability policy, saying the NFL does not take care of its players. That when folks go to try to get their disability benefits, they are routinely denied because the NFL stacks the deck against them by hiring doctors that don't give fair evaluations. So the NFL is got a lot on its plate as 30 million people will be watching the Super Bowl. Stay with us, Areva Martin, in real time after news, traffic, and sports. Dr. Brock and more. KBLA Talk 1580.
Debt ceiling negotiations.
And so what we have continuously said to our Republican colleagues is simply put your cards on the table.
New York Democrat African-American Hakeem Jeffries echoed President Biden's comments in the State of the Union address by saying this is about repaying debts already agreed to by Congress. Men who broke the color barrier in the military have been permanently in the Southern California Museum. San Diego Air Force Museum's Tuskegee Airmen exhibit features a fighter plane along with paintings and photographs of the men described as American heroes. Billboard is naming its top 10 greatest rappers of all time. Jay-Z was given top honors while Kendrick Lamar